Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Donna and I'm your host of Donna's Edge television talk show, Where Truth Matters. Thank you so much for watching Monday through Friday, beginning at 2 p.m. on the Eastern time zone, as I get to ride home with you in the afternoon. Been doing this for 20 years, and I tell you, I wouldn't do anything else. You can find us on television. We are worldwide on Abundance Television, found on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. And don't forget the podcast on thenewscasters.com. We're on the radio also. They say they're the biggest country giant around in the Carolinas, right here. WZLA. You can find them on the dial at 93.9. And they are wonderful, wonderful. Play the old country classics. If you like stuff in the 70s, you'll love the station. So check it out. You can also continue sending email. Donna at donnasedge.com. Donna at donnasedge.com. And I do take requests from you. So anything you would like for me to do a little research on, I'll be glad to. I was always the classic nerd in school, hung out at the library, and I still have it in my blood. So if you'd like for me to do some research, different topics, I'll be glad to do that for you. Continue finding us on all the social media sites. I do all of that as well. Let's go ahead and get started. We have someone with us right now. He is a conservative. His name is Tom Willis, and he's West Virginia. You're running for U.S. Senate in West Virginia. How are you doing today?
Hi, Donna. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, absolutely. Been looking forward to talking with you. So talk with me. Tell us all why you're running for office to begin with.
Well, I think my life really is about service, Donna. I think that's what God's called me to do. So I'm finishing up 25 years of service in the U.S. military. I've been in the West Virginia National Guard since 2000, and that's how I've served my community for the last 25 years. And yeah, I don't have too many years left, but as I phase out my military career in the National Guard, we felt called to continue to serve as a statesman. So I'm currently a state senator in the West Virginia state legislature, and I'm looking at my opponent, U.S. Senator Shelley Moore Capito. I'm not satisfied with her votes over the past couple of years, and the talk amongst our colleagues was she needs to go, but who can beat her? And I drew the short stick, so to speak.
Well, it sounds like a good thing right here. Let me ask you this. What is the most urgent thing you think your constituents and your voters are facing right now? What would they like to see a change in the whole United States and in your state?
Well, I think for West Virginians, Donna, it comes down to the economy and economic opportunity. That really doesn't change much from year to year, and that's something that we're working on in the state legislature. But really, I think West Virginians are looking at it from two perspectives. When I knock on someone's door, they invite me in to sit down, and we sit at the dinner table and we talk. It's almost always about the economy. There's two things. One is just economic opportunity, the cost of everyday items that you put on your table. And so that's one side of it. And the other is West Virginians we're just tired of losing our kids. And so, Donna, what happens is we have several universities in the state, but a huge percentage of our kids are leaving the state to look for jobs and better economic opportunities elsewhere. And so that's a real focus for me. And as opposed to many, I think the government's role in creating an economy is less intrusive and not more intrusive. And I'll tell you a quick story about why I say that. I've always believed it, but it was confirmed a few years ago. I was with a group, and we went down to visit Tennessee down in the capital. We were in Nashville. We sat with the Secretary of State, and this was the late teens. And so we asked him, Donna, at this point, there was 100 people per day moving into Nashville. The economy was booming. I mean, just imagine being a real estate realtor. It was a great place to be. And so we said, well, what's the secret sauce? How did you generate this growth? And so the officials from Tennessee that we were in the Secretary of State's office, interestingly, he said, well, we did the same things you guys are doing, but we went down to Texas in the late 2000s. So we asked them, what did you do? And it was Governor Perry at the time said to the Tennessee delegation, listen, it's not rocket science. You got to cut taxes as low as you can. You've got to cut regulation as low as you can. You have to protect private property rights, with a transparent, fair judicial system. And you've got to create energy abundance. And if you do those things and get out of the way, then your entrepreneurs will surprise you. And he said, you'll be surprised how fast they can move once you get government out of the way. And so Tennessee brought that home in the early teens, and by the late teens, they were booming. And that's my goal in West Virginia. And we're in a little bit of a unique situation, Donna, because for almost all of the last 100 years, West Virginia was under Democratic control. Now it's a solid red state after Obama came in and slaughtered our coal industry. But among other things, and with the moral collapse of the Democratic Party, but we're a red state. But we still have 83 years of Democratic regulations on the books, and so we're working every year to unwind those, to make them more competitive, to remove some restrictions. So one thing that I was proud of last year, I was a co-sponsor on a bill it was a universal licensing bill. So this is just one way to get government out of the way and make it less regulation, more competition, an open playing field. So our universal licensing bill basically said if you're a licensed professional in a neighboring state, electrician, plumber, even a doctor or a nurse, you can transfer into West Virginia very quickly. We cut through the red tape, and we're expecting this to create thousands of good paying professional jobs. And in fact, one of my constituents called me up. He said, "Hey, I need help. I'm a professional plumber. There was a niche commercial plumbing license he had in Virginia and Maryland, and he said to take the test in West Virginia, it's cumbersome." I said, "Listen, we just passed this universal licensing bill. I made some calls, and we cut through bureaucracy." He got his license within a week, and he was doing business with West Virginia, with local businesses, with a few days after that. So that's the type of thing that I'm talking about. How do we create economic opportunity for West Virginia? And that's what folks are most concerned about.
Oh, most definitely. Taxes, I'm going to tell you, you get anything from the IRS and your heart starts fluttering. You're almost ready for a heart attack. You're wondering, what are they doing? And I don't mind paying taxes. But then again, I don't want to pay taxes and see all this government waste at the same time. That's got to be stopped.
It really does. I've spent a lot of time traveling the world, and I've worked with several different federal agencies, the Department of Defense, of course, State Department, Energy, Federal Communications Commission, Commerce, and the old 20/80 rule applies to those agencies just like it does to private business. 20% of the people are doing 80% of the work, but it's probably worse in government. It's probably 10% of people are doing 90% of the work. So I can tell you that we could cut some of the federal agencies. There's a lot of fat to be cut, and the responsiveness and the focus on client services that you would get in a private sector business. We all know that it's lacking on the government side, and so it's a culture shift. And it comes down to leadership. I think that's one of the things that I'm offering the voters in West Virginia. I've got 25 years of leadership training in the U.S. military. I'm a Special Forces Green Beret. I'm a lieutenant colonel in the West Virginia National Guard, and I run 3 businesses in West Virginia. And my opponent, Shelley Capito, she's never served in the military. She's never, run a business to my knowledge, and she's shown zero leadership for her past 25 years in the U.S. Congress.
Well, I'll tell you how important it is to voters now. And I'm going back in the day when Papa Bush and Bill Clinton were running. So my dad's Democrat, my mother Republican. They always canceled each other's votes out, but they still went and voted. Well, the same year I voted for Ross Perot. And the reason I voted for him, not because he had a D or an R in front of his name, but he was a businessman. And I think we're seeing right now with President Trump what a businessman can do for your country.
Yep, I agree 100%, and I think that there is a real groupthink. I've seen it in Charleston, West Virginia, at our state legislature, and the same applies in the U.S. Congress in Washington D.C. You really can fall into a groupthink, and unfortunately, a lot of it's shaped by the lobbyists, and the lobbyists will frequently tell legislators how to think about certain issues. And if you're not trained to be an independent thinker or a problem solver, like a leader or like a business person, then it's easy to fall into that groupthink trap. And truth be told, Donna, I voted for Ross Perot back then too. My main thing that I liked about him was I broke with the Republicans. Yeah, I have to confess, I broke with the Republicans, but I really liked his focus on the national debt, and that's not something that I hear West Virginians talking a lot about. Some do, but it's not necessarily a top 1 or 2 issue. But everybody's concerned about it. Everybody knows at some point the bill is going to become due, and it's very frustrating for me that really the number one job for Congress is to pass the budget. Right, the power of the purse is their main power. That's their raison d'etre. That's why they're there. And I really would like to see a law passed, and I'll introduce it, where if we don't pass a budget by a certain deadline as a U.S. Congress, then nobody gets paid and nobody leaves D.C. until it gets done, and because otherwise we're just foisting it on our kids and our grandkids, and that's just evil, Donna. I mean, we don't want to be a people who does that to our young people.
No, we do not. And I just find it very interesting how, it's the middle class that suffers. If we're even going to have a middle class, I wanted to ask you a question too about the new mayor in town in New York up there. Do you think you're probably going to start seeing some of their residents come down your way?
Well, it's funny. I have some buddies from school that are working in New York, and so I'm speaking of lobbyists, I'm lobbying them to move their businesses to West Virginia now, and some of them are thinking about it. Some of them are mountain men, so Lord willing, we'll get a couple. But it's a little bit scary, honestly, to see the direction that the Democrat Party is going, and I really think that this is one of the things that I'm called to, Donna. This is one of the reasons, going back to your question, why are you running? Why is Tom Willis in this race? Well, when I was young and you looked at defending the country, you thought about joining the military and fighting against, the communist Soviet Union, with whom we could go to war at any moment. But now the socialists are inside the gate, so to speak. I mean, the battle really now is for the hearts and minds of the American people. And are we going to choose what history has proven to work, which is free market capitalism, and create the most prosperity, the most generosity, brought more people out of poverty than any other economic system in the history of the world? Or are we going to buy that old deception from the pit of hell, socialism, that if you just give the right people enough power and they redistribute and move things around, they can create a utopia for everybody, and everybody will be happy, nobody will suffer. But we know in reality, when that's been tried, 100 million people were killed last century because once socialists get into power, the system doesn't work because it's at odds with reality, and so they have to use force to keep implementing it. And so it starts with political prisoners, starts with silencing, with intimidation, then it goes to political prisoners, jailing people, and eventually murder. And the Soviets, the Chinese, the Cambodians, the Romanians, I mean, all across the board, Eritreans, 100 million people killed, and it's just failed miserably wherever it's been tried. But our young people are being indoctrinated in our schools, and so that's one of the reasons why I'm running, Donna. That's the great battle of our time, and it's something that I hope to lead on over the next years to come as we fight for the heart of our nation.
AI coming in, and I'm grasping some of it. I like some of it, some I'm afraid of. Absolutely. But I did ask a simple question. I asked this question: if a business ran their business like the government ran the government, how long would you be in business? And it answered correctly. It said, it didn't say how long like my answer would be, but it was like that it could not last. Your business would not last if you ran your business like the government. Even AI admitted that. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's just simple mathematics.
Yeah, I got it right, I think. Yeah. Well, the fact of the matter is, in a private business, if you had a private business that continued to borrow year after year, like the U.S. government does, the creditors would cut it off, and then the business would be out of business because it can't balance its budget, and that's an existential threat to our country. It's something we've got to get really serious about.
And let's keep it even simpler than that. Okay, if I had, first of all, my parents said, you get out on your own, you're going to have to make your own money. You won't be coming back getting money from us. That's what we were told, and they meant it when they said it. So, but if I borrowed money from my parents, and I just kept borrowing money from my parents. I'm pretty sure they cut it off. I'm pretty sure.
If they were, well, I'm sure you had good parents, Donna, so I'm sure they would have cut it off. Yes, because
oh, I know they would.
only.
Let's cut into a commercial break. Do you know we're over halfway through? Well, it went by fast. We'll be right back in just a few minutes. Everybody hang in there. We'll be right back. Twin City Used Car Sales has been serving drivers in the Northeast Alabama area for years with a quality selection of late model used cars, SUVs, and pickup trucks. On top of our extensive selection and competitive prices, we offer professional auto financing services for used car buyers of all credit levels. Whether you've just begun your search or you're ready to secure your next vehicle, at Twin City Used Car Sales, you will drive away with the vehicle of your dreams. The sales and finance staff at Twin City Used Car Sales looks forward to serving you, and you can apply for financing online before your visit to our used dealership in Gadsden, Alabama. Check us out on the web at twincityusedcars.com or go by our location at 901 First Avenue, Gadsden, Alabama. We sincerely look forward to serving you.
Are you ready?
We all wonder what tomorrow will bring, but the future lays itself at the feet of the prepared and surrenders to the will of the persistent. It's not easy, but today shapes you so you can shape tomorrow. With Northeast Alabama Community College, when the future asks if you're ready, you can answer
yes.
Begin your future at Northeast Alabama Community College.
Donna's Designs offers a line of handmade memorial, wedding, and keepsake jewelry that launched back in 1970. I'm a self-trained jewelry designer, and I will work closely with you to create unique designs you can love and treasure for years to come. Whether that be flowers that were used in a funeral arrangement or stones you found on the beach at a memorable trip, call me at 256-659-4319, and let's think of the possibilities.
Good afternoon. We're back. My name is Donna, and I'm your host of Donna's Edge television talk show, Where Truth Matters, which is why we've got Tom Willis with us right now. And again, thank you so much for your service, and I can't thank you enough. You know, because of folks like you, we've got a free country, even though some of the crazies are out there trying to destroy it. But I wanted to talk to you about healthcare and access. And I'm going to tell you why. This just doesn't work. It doesn't calculate. Why can you say happening to change things in healthcare?
Well, it's predictable, Donna. You know, when the government gets involved in things, it never really gets better. You know, apart from the core functions of government, you know, judicial services and defense. But when you get government mixed up in private sector businesses, such as healthcare, it's just going to get more expensive, and the service quality is going to go down. That's exactly what we've seen with Obamacare. You know, the fact that that Obamacare has to give subsidies is an indication that that the system doesn't work in accordance with the free market, and the fact that the subsidies from the COVID years are about to expire, and the rates are going to explode through the roof. Again, it's a symptom of a system that's broken, and part of the problem is whether it was from design or ignorance. When they created Obamacare, they put incentives in that were perverse incentives. And so essentially they made sure that the insurance companies wouldn't lose money because they could operate on a cost plus basis. And so when you're operating on a cost plus basis, your profit is based on how much things cost. So your incentive is to drive costs up, because if it costs $1 million and your cost plus 10%, then you can make a $100,000 profit. But if your costs are $100 million, well, now you can make a $10 million profit. So guess which one, you know, the insurance companies are incentivized to go after. So the incentive structure just really needs to be changed. And I hope that the president and the Congress can get together at this point and rework Obamacare to get the government out of the business, to open up competition. I mean, there's so many ways to lower healthcare costs and to free up competition now with telehealth, and you know, mail prescriptions can be sent by mail. But there's so many ways that technology can help now with AI, with data, predictive data analysis and that sort of thing to catch diseases before they become chronic. But when you've got government that has these little rice bowls that are protected areas of profit for certain companies, that's when you stifle competition. That's when costs go up and quality goes down. So it's a mess. It's predictable, but it's because the government got involved. And whenever, it's like Ronald Reagan said, when the government shows up and says, I'm from the government, I'm here to help, that's when you should start running.
You should also start running when they say it's for the children. That freaks me out every time I hear that. So let's talk about folks who are coming across the border, who have been since President Biden was in office. I'm being respectful. But I mean, it caused a lot of chaos. And I'll have to tell you about a small town in Alabama, Albertville, Alabama. I'm just going to tell you, it used to be a Mayberry just until recent years. Okay, so the floodgates were open. The mayor and the city council all allowed this to happen. And so people were just coming in by droves. And it's a very unsafe town. When we go back to Alabama once a month, we go and check on the sponsors. And in the state of Alabama, it's just not the same place anymore. It's just, and you have no rights as an American citizen. It's like all the rights are going to those folks. So we stayed at a hotel one night. We'll never do this again. We went to a hotel. And so I could record the next morning with some of my sponsors. And it was nothing but a party. I mean, and I love all people. My daughter-in-law is from Russia, and we are so happy to have her in our family. She has brought so much into our family since she came in. But I'm just talking about, and by the way, she's legal. No one gets more upset than she does. She's the one who carries the flag. Okay, but when folks don't want to be a legal resident of the United States, they don't want to, and they're getting freebies, I'm just telling you, it upsets the apple cart. The rest of us are having to deal with it. But it was an ongoing party that night at the hotel for all these folks. Called the desk. Girl was scared to death. She didn't know what to do. Called the cops twice. And all they did was said, we've done all we can do. And you got to have some rest the night before. We didn't get much. So what can be done about that? Is law and order is just went crazy in that area.
Yeah. Well, my wife is also a legal immigrant. I met her on a military deployment. And it's my second wife, actually. I lost my first wife to cancer, but a few years later, I met my second wife on a military deployment. And she's the same, Donna. She's a fierce supporter for legal immigration. And, I'm sure it was the same for you guys. But when we went through that process, I mean, you're talking about a stack of paper, all the forms you have to fill out. It's probably 2-3 inches thick. There's fees you have to pay for them to process that. You've got to go through interviews. You get your visa, then you get your green card, and then 5 years later you get your U.S. citizenship and passport if you pass the test and the interview. And it's very emotional for her because she did it the right way, and she loves our country. And she comes from Macedonia, and so she. Things are a little bit different there, and she knows how blessed we are here in this country. But look, this goes back to really the battle for the heart of the nation that we were talking about earlier, Donna, with socialism. Again, there's a push for lawlessness across the board, and I understand the incentive. The Democrats are looking at states like Virginia, where they brought in a ton of immigrants, especially into Northern Virginia, the D.C. area. And it really changed Virginia from a red state to a blue state. And they're thinking, let's bring in the immigrants. Eventually, they'll get citizenship. Then they're going to vote Democrat because we'll get them hooked on welfare and public services. So they'll have to vote Democrat, or else we can cut off their services, and we can change the electorate map of the United States. But really, it's depending on lawlessness to advance a political agenda, and it's just wrong. As a nation, we've got to go back to law and order. Which is, it can't be about pure power politics. I mean, law and order is consistent with the character of God, and that's why it's good, and that's why it works for a prosperous society. But I've been to countries in Europe. I've lived in Europe a couple different times, and speak a couple different languages over there. But recently, I've traveled to Europe, and some of the major capitals. For instance, my daughter is studying abroad right now. She's in Spain studying abroad, and she was talking about going to visit some of the major European capitals. And frankly, my wife and I counseled her not to, because some of them aren't safe anymore. Just like you were saying in Alabama, it's much worse in some of the major cities like Paris, Brussels, London. I mean, in fact, one of the times I've been more scared in my life than anything, I was walking with my family, and we took a wrong turn through a neighborhood in Paris, and it was a culture that didn't respect women. And I was with my wife and my daughter, and my son was on crutches because he just had leg surgery, and it was dicey. It was really dicey. Look at what's happening in London now. If you question anything about the Islamic religion, I mean, on social media, they can arrest you, and it's happened before. So we need to be very careful about who we let in this country. They need to have values that are consistent with ours. They need to assimilate to our culture, and they need to respect law and order and do it the legal way. Absolutely.
We took a missionary trip to South Uganda, Africa a few years ago. We had to really equate to how they do things. Because if not, and so we were told how to dress. Okay, for instance, women could not wear your dress above your knee. And if you wore pants in that particular region of Africa, the women were thought of as being prostitutes. So we wore long dresses just to be cool, But we felt like we had to assimilate for them. I mean, we didn't go in there and say, no, this is what we want to do. This is our rights. We have no rights when we're in that country. And it just blows my mind that people would come to this country and want you to go by what they feel and what they think. And I really don't understand women's rights. I feel like we have went back 100 years in women's rights when it comes to, sports, where men can compete with women. I mean, where are all those women back in the 1960s who were talking about women's rights? Where are they at now? We need them.
Yep. Yeah, that's one of the main reasons I'm running. Honestly, Donna, recently my opponent, Shelley Moore Capito, skipped the vote to keep boys out of girls' sports, and the bill failed because of that. And that's just not consistent with West Virginia values. But it's reminiscent of people that have a deranged mind. They start to lose track with reality when they start to lose their moral foundation, and that's what we're dealing with. But the failure to assimilate. And I've been in many countries in military uniform, and I've worked out of 3 different embassies around the world on 3 different continents. And in each case, I always made an effort to learn the language, to speak the language, to follow their customs. Even though I was only in country for maybe 1 year or 3 years, I assimilated very quickly, and my family did as well. And we just thought that was the unselfish, respectful thing to do. That's what normal good people should be doing, right?
It's called respect. Absolutely. And I'd like to see a lot more of that. We're going to have to call it a day. My goodness, we're running just a little bit past schedule. I know you've got a busy, busy day. Thank you so much for being with me on the show. And I wish you all the luck in the world. We're going to have another one. So I have a few more questions I'd like to ask you, and I'm sure all the folks would like to hear this as well. Again, thank you so much for being with me. I definitely appreciate that. And thank you guys so much. Continue sending emails. I love them. You're not bothering me one bit. Donna@donnasedge.com. Donna@donnasedge.com.